Happy winter solstice everyone. Seemed like a good time to publish my first ever story. If you haven't figured out that fanfic writers don't own the source material, nothing I do can help you. And now there is one last decision to make. Artemis turned to Bianca. Have you made up your mind, my girl? Bianca hesitated. I'm still thinking about it. What? Oh, her huntresses? Percy questioned. Yes. Well, I was offered a position but... She trailed off. Nico. Not just him, the camp you were talking about, and growing old with a husband with kids around me. Percy, you know camp at least. If you could leave it, would you? Directing a pleading look towards Percy as she did. Thou art asking him. Undoubtedly he will say yes, thou should go to camp. Zoe stated. My honest opinion. Bianca nodded. He turned to Artemis. My lady, are we protected from other listeners? As well as we could be. Why? Artemis turned, looking more interested in Percy's response. Because it would be rather unhealthy for me if my feelings were well known. I can't demand that you keep this to yourself, but please think of consequences for me. With nods, some more hesitant than others, he continued. If you were a clear-sighted mortal, I'd say run, say no and never look back. I can't speak on serving Lady Artemis, but this is not a life a child should be living. Unfortunately you're half-blood. You can't run, this is your life now. As for camp, one don't know what would happen. You could be claimed when you stepped foot in camp or die of old age before even getting a sign, all the while being stuffed in Hermes' overcrowded cabin. He finished bitterly. It's that bad, she whispered. Worse, he sighed. We actually found you. The only ones that know how many die before being found keep their mouths shut, assuming they even remember their kids. As for a husband, the only males that you easily could be with are part of the divine world, and well, to be blunt, I haven't been impressed with those I've met. Bianca gained a look of confusion. Wait, what about our classmate, the one that you know? You and the other girl seem to be friendly with him. Grover, well, he only interacted with me due to being my keeper at school before camp. After that he completely failed to impress that I was in danger from my uncles, directly leading me to both fear for my sanity and my mother's abduction. Last summer, without my permission, he formed an empathetic link with me. He did what? The girl that suddenly looked a lot more like a goddess growled out. What justification was there? More importantly, did he remove it? Saving his life, I mean, it led us to the Golden Fleece, but still. He never explained what one was other than what I observed, communication in dreams, other than if he dies I die, so when he offered to remove it I didn't see the point. It let me keep an eye on a friend's friend. This is a much bigger deal than what I'm seeing, isn't it? Bianca spoke up after seeing the rage on the other girls' faces. Especially seeing how Zoe is getting angry on your behalf. Yes, bonds of all sorts are not to be taken lightly in this world. The bond of your word, meaningless in the mortal world, holds weight for those that can feel it. If that is the case, imagine how much stronger other bonds might be. For instance, the Styx, to bind a statement to another demands that it be true to the eyes of the binder. Said the goddess. Wait, what? Both Percy and Bianca looked confused at that. Percy continued. I've never heard it that way. Only that it is a binding oath that punishes you should you break it. Yes, that works well enough for general use, but it is more than that. As an example, imagine two people should compete in a foot race swearing to follow the rules, stating only that it is a race and the first across the line is the winner. If one of them were to use a magic item or potion to increase their speed, the oath would take its due, so long as the other doesn't have the same plan, despite the wording of the rules allowing the items. The binder would see it as a breach of the oath, an unsaid rule of being a foot race. That would be incredibly important to know. Why isn't it more common knowledge? Percy questioned. Because it alters what the oath is viewed as. Someone could, potentially, use an oath that seems open, but that they understand is closed to make another break their oath unwillingly. While there are protections against that, it was never the focus and thus can be seen as rather dangerous. The system works just fine as it is explained, so long as everyone gives and receives the oath on good faith. Besides, even in that race it would only work under very certain circumstances. Should they state to follow the rules as stated or agreed, one of them would be free to use magic. So long as thou do not swear an unintentionally vague oath, that later thou look for loopholes, the risk of the binder seeing thy break the oath without thou thinking so is, in practice, zero. As one should never swear on the Styx lightly, thou are fine. Zoe cut in. This is all interesting, but what about what Grover did? Bianca asked. Artemis sat back. An empathic bond means a great deal but is hard to explain what it truly is. Simply put, it is the highest bond one can create without ritual or divine aid in our world. She put a hand up to cut off Percy, who looked to ask something more. Those in the later stages of courtship naturally create one. The forming and maintaining of one often being an indicator of impending marriage. At this, Percy couldn't hold back a yelp of surprise. Marriage. Parents have one with their child that naturally breaks down as they age. His consternation remained. I have one with each of my huntresses. When formed with consent, information passes in both ways, allowing both to become closer. My own lets me know both where all my huntresses are and how they are doing. The bear girl, Percy suddenly exclaimed. That explains it. Does thou mean Callisto? Zoe asked, quite confused. Yes, her. It never made sense that a goddess that protects maidens would turn on one that was raped by her father in her form. He stated. Yes, her. It never made sense that a goddess that protects maidens would turn on one that was raped by her father in her form. He stated, getting excited. You knew that she had been raped, gave her time to tell you, but she chose to deceive you. She tried to make you think she was still a maiden. Lying to the gods is not a smart thing, they tend to punish you for it, so she was turned into a bear by you. I don't know how that version of the story became popular. Zeus raped her, Hera got pissed, and I put her in the sky to honor my friend. Artemis exclaimed with some exasperation. Then who shot her? Percy asked, looking disappointed that his deduction was incorrect, to the amusement of the three girls. I did. Thou do not know, to be transformed is a horrid state to be in. I put her out of her misery. Zoe said with some regret. No, I know how much it sucks to be changed. I never have looked at guinea pigs the same way. Percy mumbled. I feel like there is a funny story there. Bianca laughed. You've met Circe then. Anyway, back on empathic bonds. The good mood from imaging Percy as a guinea pig dried up. Forced bonds are one way. Grover knows everything that the bond tells him, but Percy is given only what Grover lets him have. Further, it seems like either he was lying or is terrible at bonding, as empathic bonds can't cause death by themselves, especially not forced bonds. Well, that was even worse than what I found out. I just learned that they share a great deal of information and nothing on forced bonds being a thing. Yes, the knowledge that empathic bonds can be forced tend not to be written down. One can do a great deal of harm with knowledge one can provide. She solemnly stated. So could Grover have read of them, knew the theory of how they worked, and modified something to change what would be mutual to forced without meaning to? Bianca asked. Yes, at that point he still would be guilty of a great deal, but not necessarily of forcing an empathic bond. He might even have tried to create some other bond, but it changed into one. Artemis conceded. So Grover is still an idiot, but maybe not malevolent? Percy asked. Indeed. Well, what about Chiron then? He has been helping heroes for years. The goddess questioned. My lady, are we really going to go through every male influence that you can think of? He asked, exasperation mixed with amusement. If you are willing, we have time. Coming from you, the actions of males speak louder than from me. He turned to Bianca. Would it help? Yes, she whispered, eyes downcast. I'm sorry. Don't be, I offered, and honestly I need to get it off my chest. Chiron has the same problem as Grover, as he made a house call to teach me. During said house call he allowed a fury to attack me when I had no training whatsoever. Wait, Percy, killing Alecto could have caused more problems than it would solve. For one, you would start to question yourself, increasing your scent. He was likely hoping our uncle would order her away. Artemis interrupted. Perhaps. Anyway, on my first day he barely answered any of my questions, most of the time ignoring them, failed to tell me anything important about camp other than hey, the gods are real and one of them is your father. After my claiming allowed the passive-aggressive bullshit the whole camp pulled on me, making it clear I wasn't wanted, and when I got a quest he didn't tell me anything about it before I accepted it. Even after I accepted, he didn't tell me what he knew and sent me off to face one of the big three with 3 weeks of training. And this is just the first summer. Percy ranted. Let's not forget that the only weapon he gives me is a sword that makes me want to weep when I use her. What do you mean? I've never heard of such a thing. Artemis cut in, helping to end the rant. Anaklusmos, at this Zoe hissed. It feels like someone ripped half of a soul and shoved it into a blade. She is crying out for her other half, begging me to rejoin her. She only recognizes me as a wielder because I'm of the sea and I want to rejoin her. She did cry out in joy when you arrived though, so maybe one of the huntresses knows something about her. Percy finished confused. Zoe, Artemis stated. My lady, please, she replied with a pained look. Move on, you can fix one of your regrets. Not many get that chance. Zoe sighed. Very well, Perseus, Anaklusmos was once mine. I poured my immortal essence and connection to the sea into her, fashioning a weapon for someone I trusted. The end result was that I was cast from my family, forgotten, and left mortal. In the end I joined Artemis and regained what I had lost. But not all of it. Well, I can't give what was never mine, so here, take her back. Though I am going to need to find a new weapon, nothing else has worked for me. He trailed off. The girls looked on, flabbergasted. What, even if I didn't want to give her back, now that I know who she belongs to, I'd never be her wielder. Looks of understanding followed. I thank thou, I don't know if she'll accept me back though. This ended with a longing look. Zoe, she has been crying out for you the entire time that I have held her. I don't think you have anything to fear, he softly said. I'm not quite sure how to regain my connection to the sea, something to look into I suppose. I thank thou, Percy, but what of thou? You said no other blade worked for thou. Artemis gained a pensive expression. I'm not sure, he said with a worried look. Back on the subject of Chiron though, apparently he has taken the time to teach Talia how to manipulate the mist while never even showing me that a demigod could. This despite how much trouble I've had with mortals trying to interpret the mist. No, other than an administrative capacity and teaching archery, I've not seen much of him. Considering I'm banned from the range due to my skill at being unskilled, as one son of Apollo put it, I've not seen much of him. What dost thou think of Dionysus? Everyone who knew him gave a look of disgust. He views interacting with campers as a punishment, that should give you a good idea of how unpleasant he can be. Percy stated, with Bianca looking to the other girls for confirmation. Do you have any others, or is time for the big three? Do you have any others, or is time for the big three? Well, there is my younger brother Tyson. Percy gained a fond expression. The most I could say bad about him would be at the end of last summer going to Dad's forges to learn. He quickly continued, I don't really hold that against him as I live in the mortal world during the school year. He also has the mentality of an 8-year-old. So he is probably the only example I have that's not terrible. I also could talk about Luke and the shit that he has put Annabeth and Talia through, but the simple fact that he betrayed all of us for grandfather should be enough. No one sane should want him to rule. Quite. Why do you refer to the crooked one as grandfather? I would assume you would want to cut all ties of family with him. Artemis asked, confused. Oh, I do. I just called him that once, and from what I could make out from the raving he seemed to dislike it. As we shouldn't call him by name, it seemed like the most fun way of referring to him. He said cheerfully, calling him something like the crooked one gives him power over us in some ways. You have a habit of angering immortals. I still remember Medusa's head on your first quest, the look on Zeus' face. Artemis smiled with Zoe. What did you do with her head? Bianca asked. She gained another cheerful response. Oh, I mailed it to the council. Said from Percy with love. Looking back on it, wasn't the best of choices. I could have angered some of the goddesses that I respect, which would be unfortunate. Not gods. Not on the council or at all. So then who do thou respect, Perseus? Zoe asked with an edge of danger. Well, she isn't on the council but Hestia, though I doubt that you could find anyone to disagree with that. While I don't like her Hera, not snapping and killing everyone is impressive given her domains and who she is married to. Other than her pride, I mostly respect Athena. She does too much stupid shit for me to like her though. Aphrodite scares the shit out of me with the mess she could cause my life. He finished fearfully. And what of my lady? What of Lady Artemis? Zoe asked, her eyes narrowing as the list went on. Hell, if there was a route to swearing an oath to her for males, I'd probably do so without a thought. Yes, she has a role in punishing others, but all of them should have been punished best I can tell. You do not go saying you're better than the gods, for example. But angering them is fine, Artemis stated with clear amusement. Meh, most of them hate me for being born due to the oath, so calling them out is not changing too much. He flippantly responded. But anyway, she is one of the only goddesses that regularly interacts with non-divine beings and helps those that are marginalized. And why didn't we start with you being willing to swear an oath, Percy? That would have answered my question and saved us time. Bianca sweetly asked, eyes narrowed. Because I just realized how much I want to get away from camp and the gods. It's not like I've let myself actually think these things through. Perseus, thou art not about to be impudent with that, art thou? Zoe stated steely. No, like I said, wanting grandfather to rule is not a sane choice. Would I like to see some reforms in how things are done, however? Yes. You clearly aren't loyal to the council. Who are you loyal to, Perseus Jackson? Artemis asked with some measure of concern. My friends, my family, and the 2 goddesses I like, was the steady reply. Bianca looked confused at the sudden change in mood. I get that traitors are a bad thing, but this seems more the same reason I don't have more siblings or cousins running around. There is a prophecy that states the first child of the big 3 to make it to 16 will hold the future of Olympus in their hands. Percy said with a sigh. For about 2 years I was thought to be that child. Talia has that honor, for now, but I am still next in line. Still can't get a clear answer on what the prophecy is though. He finished with a note of frustration. There are too many unknowns for the prophecy to be useful right now. As far as we know, grandfather doesn't know it, which gives us an advantage. But on the subject of the big 3, what of your father? The first thing I remember him saying about me is calling me a mistake, talking about the oath, and how I am, rightly, a wrongdoing, a walking broken oath. He bit out. After that, saying he wished I hadn't been born, more talking about being born into the life of a hero rather than in general, however. Taking a more positive tone by the end. I will give him that at the end he claimed me of the sea and expressed pride in me. Though I was claimed not because he wanted to but because he needed me to clear his name. That was mostly to protect me, I would like to think. So it comes down to, is it the thought or the action that is important? One of the reasons I respect you so much, with you interacting with your huntresses so much, there can be no doubt that you care for them, that they are more than just tools for you. That's much better than anyone else I can think of. He finished fondly. Ancient laws stop most of them from being able to interact with their kids, Percy. She warned. I know that, but they don't stop them from claiming their kids as soon as possible in camp. They don't stop them from ordering quests to find them, and they don't stop them from giving gifts their kids want to let them know they both are thinking of them and watching them. He said with frustration, if even one of these was true, grandfather would have much less support than he has now from the demigods, and we would have more that made it to camp if quests were sent out. Oh, other than the claiming, I've never thought of those options for showing care. And I doubt that any of your fellows have either. Another choice for their daughters would be to send you and have them join the hunt. This is the frustration I have with the gods, a seemingly inability to think of something new. Here Artemis looked mildly offended. I asked around for what quests have been given out, and they all either are to deal with a threat of some kind or to do something that someone else has done. She seemed to concede to the point. While yes, no new monsters are forming, meaning there is a limit on the new things that someone could fight, that doesn't mean that there is nothing that could be done. Have the gods make a challenge for their kids to try and complete with a prize at the end, or have gods challenge certain demigods to do their own. Demigods could even create their own challenge courses, with friends or siblings, and by finding what they would need outside of camp the whole thing could become a quest. By the end of this rant Artemis was looking at Percy wide-eyed. Well, yes, I think that I have some suggestions to make to the council this solstice. But we have gotten very off track here. Bianca, have you made your choice? I think so, but first. She looked at Zoe. Is it worth it? Zoe nodded. It is. What do I have to do? Say this, Zoe told her. I pledge myself to the goddess Artemis. I pledge myself to the goddess Artemis. I turn my back on the company of men, accept eternal maidhood, and join the hunt. Bianca repeated the lines. That's it. Zoe nodded. If Lady Artemis accepts thy pledge, then it is binding. I accept it, Artemis said. The flames in the brazier brightened, casting a silver glow over the room. Bianca looked no different, but she took a deep breath and opened her eyes wide. I feel stronger. Welcome, sister, Zoe said. Remember your pledge, Artemis said. It is now your life. Not to interrupt, but I feel like I really shouldn't have been here for that part. That seemed intimate. I'm not even sure Zoe should have been here. Indeed, my lady, this is the first time thou have let others see the bond form. Why? The girl in question asked. Bianca needed you here, Zoe. You were the one who she would open up to, not me and you, Perseus. You gave something of yourself to us. It formed a bond. That it was something so important and that no one else suspects, let alone knows, only made it stronger. Further, like Zoe, you convinced her, not me or Zoe, you. I was respecting that. Right, well, could you keep that from the campers? I have the strangest suspicion that Talia doesn't like you. He said sheepishly. And what could have given you that idea? I had thought we were like sisters. Artemis finished with a wail. Zoe, help. Talia has forsaken me. My lady, I don't think my word would do thou any good. She deadpanned, forming a smirk. Indeed, my words may cause more problems. Percy glanced over at Bianca. Were they like that before I got here? He whispered. No, I'm just as confused as you. Maybe if you weren't here, after the pledge they might have been more welcoming. I mean, Zoe did call me sister. Should we stop them? As the pair descended in more melodramatics about family hating them. And if so, how? Didn't Zoe say that her sword left her cast out of her family? Bianca asked sadly. You think that they are going through this to make light of the fact that Zoe's family disowned her and half of Artemis thinks she hates them for being born? I mean, do you have a better idea for what's going on? She retorted. No, but why am I allowed to see it? Well, Lady Artemis did say that we bonded to you as well. Maybe that was enough for the barriers to come down some. Well, regardless, I feel like I should be honored that I saw this. I'm not sure anyone out of her huntresses have. Indeed, Perseus Jackson. Artemis suddenly sobered up. My huntresses will always be more open to you. While you don't have a bond with all of them, you do have a bond with me. When bonds are this intertwined, they affect each other. Intertwined? Your bond with us came while convincing Bianca to bond with me, then seeing said bond form. Be careful of your words about us. Should you make anything that sounds like an oath of loyalty, it very well could be binding. As Bianca and Zoe now both act as extensions of myself, the oath would go straight to me. The goddess warned. What would that mean, my lady? Zoe questioned. I'm not sure, she admitted. I've had men swear oaths that allow them to interact more with the huntresses, generally when the oracle demands them in a quest, and this would contain those elements. I couldn't force Percy to permanently go against his wishes. Oaths of loyalty don't work that way, but getting him to obey an order that he dislikes would be well within one. It would mean that as far as the council goes, he was mine. Yours, the boy in question piped up. Your actions would reflect on me. As an example, the curse Ares put upon you marks you as an enemy. I would take that conflict. I could then negate the curse but increase the tension between Ares and I. That's not a great example, as the increase would be next to meaningless compared to what is there already. More likely, for a few months he would be more proactive in frustrating me. A better example would be with the big three. They would view my stance as more sympathetic to the sea and would be more likely to send monsters to test my huntresses. That doesn't sound that good, Bianca said worriedly. It actually is better than it sounds, as what I'd lose would be a small measure of father's favor, but he normally likes me too much for that to matter. But what I'd gain would be that my huntresses could go to the beach and enjoy it, without being attacked by sea monsters every half hour or so. My father has that much a problem with you. Rarely does our votes match, and often does he do something I disapprove of. That is enough for him. Talia. Likely will never be able to go to the beach without you, yes. She interrupted. Do you know of anything else that the oath might cause? Why are you so interested in the oath, Percy? Well, I have a habit of putting my foot in my mouth, so I might end up swearing one on accident. If that is the case, I would like to know as much as possible before the fact. I got burned by Grover. I won't let that happen again. Further, as I said, I'm not opposed to swearing an oath to you. I'm just trying a new thing of looking before I leap. I hear it's useful, he finished with a chuckle. Speaking of that bond, I will break it once we are done. If you want, you can pretend to have no idea about it. If he questions me, I'll just say I was breaking a non-consensual bond. Anyway, it should let me force you to make an oath to not pursue romantic relationships with my huntresses. I don't know about as a whole, though. I wouldn't be able to grant my blessing like my huntresses without you doing some great deed for me. It would lack immortality, though. Other than that, you would likely spend your time helping me in different ways, rarely cleaning my temples, training to better yourself, training my huntresses to fight in a melee, and hunting, be that alone or with us. I'm not really seeing a downside here, my lady. Most of them would dislike you at first. You already said they will be more accepting of me due to the bonds. Forsaking your father as your primary voice on the council. I trust you far more to even know what I would want, let alone voice it. Janitor duty. You already said that would be rare, and I really don't mind keeping places of devotion to you clean. Percy, thou would need to improve thine archery. Shit, he replied to much laughter. You truly wouldn't mind swearing to me and leaving camp. As I've said, my first summer made it clear. They only care about me when I do great things. After the quest everyone wanted to be my friend. He said with disgust. That has kept me from trusting them. Well, I can't truly stop you from an oath of loyalty to me, so I can only recommend that you see how well my huntresses tolerate you before choosing. Wait, you needed to accept my pledge, why isn't that the case with Percy? Your pledge was binding, the blessing I gave you. It was set in the moment you spoke it, my acceptance was giving you my blessing. I think that makes sense. Bianca hesitantly replied. We have delayed long enough, I suppose we must meet my brother. Artemis sighed as she turned to Percy. Percy, try to help keep everyone calm at camp. Calm. My huntresses don't take kindly to being hit on or thought less of. Their response most often is violent and causes further resentment from the campers, escalating things. If you can keep the campers from doing anything, the huntresses' stay will be more enjoyable for all. And you can't ask them to lessen their response. No, I wish I could, but many have been assaulted and carry the scars, all of them have seen the aftermath. Put simply, they can't see the difference between the build-up to an assault and a simple compliment or asking them out. They know of their reputation of not dating, so therefore anyone who asks is either far too arrogant or will assault them in their eyes. Ah, right, that's some good reasons for the campers to be the ones to change. I'll see what I can do, at the least I can remind everyone that they don't date and will react poorly if asked, as it is betraying the pledge they made. Speaking of pledge, what would the turn my back on the company of males mean if I was around due to an oath? Well, for one, the pledge is based on what I think, so it wouldn't be an issue. Secondly, it has always been from an individual perspective, as the whole group would be with you, they would be fine. Finally, it is mostly from a romance perspective, so friendships would be fine. It sounds more like you're trying to bend the pledge. A little, but you wouldn't always be around, so that's fine, and the first part is the most important. They pledge themselves to me, if I say it is fine no one can question it. But again you distract me, Artemis said with a playful glare while standing up, starting the deer that had laid in her lap. Sorry, so we are using Apollo to get to camp then? Yes, Bianca D'Angelo is not the only one with an annoying brother. It's time for you to meet my irresponsible twin, Apollo. I finally know what people are talking about when a story goes a different direction. This was intended to be a short rant conversation with Artemis, where a more pessimistic Percy bonded over the questionable choices males have made around him. Instead, several plot points showed up, primarily the importance of bonds. I'm flying blind here, but have the next 3 chapters and some further events planned out but not written. Review. Hopefully I can improve my writing and make something of a different story when Percy interacts with Artemis.